Good morning or afternoon, somewhere in between. How are we all?
Hey there. Good.
Great.
Fine form. I was a minute or two late there. Are we going through the notes and adding people? I think we had quite a full agenda, if I recall.
Happy to be the minute taker today, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Dan. Welcome back. Sorely missed in previous meetings. Although Jacques did notably step up. So do we have Andrew on the line? Yes, we do. Excellent. Do we have Mike Scavetta on the line? Yes, we do. Henrik. Nope, Diller is there. And Jeff, I think there was, we didn't add it to the agenda, but I think there was a bit of a double tap on the manifesto or request to do so. Is that right? Yep. Right. Let me switch things around a little. I may. Okay.
Does
So-
somebody have the link to the doc to the meeting minutes handy?
Yep. Let me drop that in.
Thank you.
So just for future reference for everyone, in the Slack chat at the top, we have bookmarked the end user notes and our mission goals, Zoom, etc., etc. All right. So if people can add themselves to the notes document, I'd appreciate it. Well, let's kick off. So Dan, thank you for being the scribe. Start with any new friends joining us today. Anyone new? Don't see anyone, to be honest. Going once, going twice. If anyone's new, please raise your hand if you would like to say hello. Otherwise, we'll move on. All right. So if I can hand over to Andrew, you were going to give a bit of a membership update on how you've been getting on. Andrew, you there?
Yes. So, yes, there we go. Sorry, a little slow this morning. I had committed to having a spreadsheet out. I apologize. The last 2 weeks have included our fiscal year end, spring break, travel, vacation, and illness. So I apologize for that, but I will get it out. I know, Jonathan, you had mentioned that I think ADP is interested in participating. That's awesome.
Yep.
I have also received commitments. I thought Morgan was going to be here today, but I don't see that they're on the call, I don't think. Morgan Stanley. And Mercedes has committed. So I'm really excited about them participating. They are freeing up the right person, but they committed last week to joining this group, as has Boeing. So we've got some other highly regulated industries that are joining. So I'm really excited about that. Also, briefly, it's not membership. Hopefully, it will be membership after the activity. But I want to talk a little bit about OpenSSF Day at the Linux Summit North America Vancouver. So I had 2 presentations accepted there. Well, one is a panel that I'm doing with IBM and Comcast and Morgan Stanley, actually, on just a kind of an overall topical view of OpenSSF and the state of cybersecurity and so on. And Nithya Ruff is joining us, who's chairman of Linux Foundation. on the panel. So we're excited to have her participate. And then the other one I submitted, I wanted to have a panel of members here. But what I found out at the last second, literally 4 hours before the deadline, is that any and every panel presentation must have a female participate and also someone from a kind of a underserved class. And so I didn't have all my panelists committed, so I kind of rewrote the presentation as a presentation on OpenSSF end user activities with Jonathan and myself, and that was accepted also. So I'm excited to do that, but I would still like to see if we can turn it into a panel. So I am, so Jonathan and I are kind of reaching out. We'd like to find out if there are going to be any female attendees or participants from this working group being at or in person at the event in Vancouver, or if we can network within our organizations to try and find someone who can participate. I'm sure that they will be happy to turn this presentation into a panel if we can meet the guidelines. And it's a good guideline as far as I'm concerned. I just hadn't realized that until until a couple of hours before the deadline. So I'll stop there for a second.
Sounds great to me. Should be in Vancouver. Obviously, I think we've raised this a couple of times before. Many other people are going to be in Vancouver are able to make the trip. Yeah, I'm not sure how many people are going to make it this time. Let's see. Well, I'd be glad to have you across there.
I'll be in Vancouver. I'll be there.
Excellent. Excellent, Jay. Well, I think when we get there, we'll see if we can catch up with people. I think it'd be great to catch up over a beer or two and start to talk about some of the end user group work. Very cool. All right, Andrew, thank you very much. And it sounds like some good progress there on the commitments. Hopefully, we can get people attending. Right.
Well, it's nice of them to commit, but they also need to be here.
They do. They've done the initial easy part. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. All right. Very cool. Right. So next item on the agenda was a request from Mike Scavetta around the Omega Assurance framework, something that I've been cooking up. It sounds interesting from the Alpha Omega group.
Cool.
Present, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks. You can see my screen names, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to go through the deck super quick. It'll be demo and hopefully questions and whatever. So assurance assertions. The goal is provide stakeholders consumable data that they can use to describe the security quality of a thing. This is very related to, and I don't want to get too far into the, well, what's a risk? What's a, vulnerability? Is it general? Is it for me? Like those are all really good things. I don't want this to be about that, or this topic today to be about that. But it's basically more than give stakeholders enough information to make informed decisions themselves about whatever they believe the riskiest aspects of it to be are. For example, right today, we have things like, scorecard metrics, which are mostly around, I'll say, health, security configuration, things like that, of a repo. It doesn't do, for example, static analysis. It'll do like CVE checks. So a lot of organizations are pretty limited to kind of those two types of things when they evaluate a piece of open source. Most organizations, I would dare say practically all of them, don't crack into the open source code itself to see, is this thing safe? And that's because it's expensive and it's hard. So we're trying to lower the bar there in a way that just kind of moves the needle like one notch up. It's supposed to complement everything else. This is not intended to overlay on top or it's intended to complement GWOC scorecards, DEPS dev, a lot of other things. So context, most open source has never undergone any kind of security validation, I'm saying looking at the code, the real, the lowest level stuff, because it's expensive, but we need this data available. So the insight that kind of led to this, I think, is if you run the best security tools on a piece of open source and it doesn't find any SQL injection, for example, you could make a statement that to the best of the state of the art, that project does not have any SQL injection. And then others can rely on that, knowing that you've done your best to make that statement factual. So after that, it's basically, I'm just going to skip through most of this. So there are two parts of this. There's assertions and policies. An assertion is a fact. Example assertions, I was able to rebuild this package from this source code repository. As of this moment, it is marked, it is associated with these CVEs. It's actively maintained based off of scorecard. It has these aggregate findings from CodeQL or SemGraph, or pick your favorite tool. A code review was completed by this organization. And a security expert looked at this tool and said, it looks good to me. It implements crypto. It contains Perl. These are all things that should be factual and objective. We can precisely define what these things mean, and it shouldn't be an argument over like what they, whether they're like what they imply. That they're just a fact. These things are expressed as JSON. It's loosely in toto. We're going to snap to the in toto attestation spec as that matures. But for now, it's supposed to be readable with just enough information to convey what it's supposed to. There is evidence included in it. So if you actually don't trust our assertion, you can go a little bit deeper. So this is an example of one based off of scorecards. And then so that's assertions. And then you have policies, and the policy is where you add like your value, your judgment, your what do you want to see. So you, as an organization, I would like all the packages that my organization consumes to be actively maintained. I don't think that any NPM modules should be implementing crypto, meaning like the math within that module. I just don't think that's appropriate. For example, like, so I can express the policies like that in terms of something that executes against one or more assertions, and then comes out with a pass-fail. So we can, policy, we create lots of assertion, lots of policies, and then you can kind of choose which ones are good for your organization or make up your own. High-level architecture, we do some analysis. The important thing here on this slide is that there's no human in the loop. So while you could have an additional assertion that I, as a security expert, like I review left pad, I said, I think it's all good, so I'm going to sign off on that. That can be an additional assertion. And maybe that has a lot of value for you, or maybe you don't trust something that has no value for you. That's an important part of this, is that trust comes from the consumer. So all of us could be providing similar assertions into a common data store. And when you consume from that data store and make policy decisions based off of that, you can choose who to trust. You don't have to trust. You can trust OpenSSF. You could not trust OpenSSF. You can have a private store that's you keep yourself. You could use the public one. You could use our policies. You could write your own policies. It's all open source and fun, and you can just add your own. API surface is pretty simple. It's you generate an assertion with this kind of input, this type, and then you analyze it, meaning running all the assertions, and then on the consumption part, similar API service, you get out a pass fail. Jonathan, your hands up.
Yeah, I just we talked about this before, but just trying to set some context of, as an end user, we're consuming software and we're trying to validate software and get a secure place for people to build and test software, and we can consume that. Is the idea behind this to provide the additional sort of security attestation on top of that, so that we can then make those policy decisions? And if that's really where we're going, who are you suggesting that OSSF or Alpha Omega is going to perhaps start to create these assertions? I'm just trying to figure out where that trust boundary is going,
Yes, so I do think that, well, I think it'll be more obvious from the web view, which I think is coming up. Yeah, I think that's all I have for the deck. Here's the demo site, or not demo, I mean, it's a real site. So you're welcome to click around the links in the docs, but so this is the NPM Cheerio module. These are the assertions that were generated. So for example, this shows that there were no crypto implementations found within the module. This one shows that there are no security advisories. So basically everything, I mean, these are all no clam AV results. So the assertions, again, just the facts, the policies, that I don't think there should be any malware or viruses detected. And this is really just a pass fail because this is the execution of that policy against those assertions. So what you could do here, there's an API. So if you wanted, and Jonathan, we talked about this, and I fully intend to make it as kind of a CLI, version of this, so you can just do like, I don't know, check npm Cheerio at the command line and come up with, policy A fail, pass, or just the fail ones or whatever. But it could just call this API and do this. You could also restrict things to a particular policy set. I intend to make it so that you can create your own, through the website and stuff like that. But but essentially you have this thing. And then Jonathan, after our previous conversation, you mentioned like it would be cool to have like the dependency view. So this is Cheerio's dependency tree, directs and indirects and how they all fare. So obviously demo site, I don't have a lot of data, but I do have some. So this is showing that, no viruses or malware were detected in DOM handler, DOM utils, and the rest of them. But like this one over here, bool base is not actively maintained. Yet Cheerio is. So like that's that's interesting in some way. So what else?
So Michael, sorry,
Please.
you mentioned on the slides that the trust will be kind of like placed on the end user to really take that decision, right? Are
Yes.
we gonna kind of like go with that path without any guidance, or how?
No, I would say so for normal people, I would say the default would be trust OpenSSF. And if there's another organization, if we want to do kind of a formal relationship with another organization that creates lots of these, then maybe that would be part of the default. But if you, as part of your internal organization, you only want to trust assertions generated by yourself or one of your partners, and you don't want to trust the OpenSSF ones, that would be fine too. Look, imagine another scenario. So as part of the assertions, I run semgrep and CodeQL, let's say. You don't like those tools, you only want to rely on Coverity. You run Coverity yourself, generate assertions, somehow get them into a common pool of assertions. So you only want to trust static analysis results that come from Coverity. So that would be another example where it's not so much the signer, but the attributes of the assertion that you trust. Because the policy evaluation is the default is just open policy agent, so just Rego. You can slice and dice the assertions in whatever way you want to decide whether or not you want to evaluate them. So we should come here with an opinion, but we should be flexible enough that if you have different opinions, you can ignore ours and just use the framework as a
right.
As a framework.
And I guess just as a follow-up in terms of guidance, right? So for example, right now you have on the policies no virus or malware detected, right? But there is no clear, I guess, reference of how this was evaluated, right? So
correct. I intend
yeah.
the help here to describe that this is just placeholder text. I intend to describe that, but also link to the raw policy itself, in case that's helpful. Like, I don't know. I get your point. We need to make it clear why what are they actually saying what are we actually saying when we say no virus or malware detected? Totally good.
And for that case, for the rest of the policies too, right?
Yeah, everything.
So,
Jack.
Michael, it'd be interesting to understand how you're going to actually, the language used to describe that. So for example, if you said that we ran this through XYZ tool and no virus was detected, I don't think that those vendors whom are described may want their name mentioned for liability reasons, right? So how are you, are you going to create a set of metadata, or how are you going to actually describe it?
Well, so a couple things. Right now the only AV vendor that I'm using is Clam AV. So I feel pretty comfortable with using that. I also feel comfortable that expressing facts, like I am saying that I ran this and it came out with 0 results, and here's the output. Like, we're not saying that the tool is good or bad or things like that, but I totally get that there's a liability thing there. Before we especially reference commercial tools and what they found or did not find, we need to have that conversation with, I guess, LF Legal to, find the right balance of the two. But I also don't want to water it down so much that we can't say anything useful for fear of offending somebody. So, but
I think Jacques had his hand up. Question, Jacques?
Yes. This is going to sound a lot like I'm an academic giving a speech and reply at a conference. But have you had a chance to read my requirements for a universal asset graph before?
Sorry, for which
I wrote an essay a couple of years ago, requirements for a universal asset graph. Did that have across your desk?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay.
I read it, Jacques.
Oh, thank you. Very funny, of course. I bring it up just because there's overlap with Guac is doing, and they took some inspiration from that paper, and I'm sort of concerned about proliferation of different things that store similar data.
So we've already I've had some preliminary conversations with Guac. It would totally make sense for me, from my perspective, for these to be attributes living within a Guac graph. Now, whether they're also accessible through a different UI surface, because I think the Guac UI surface, like right now, relying on
it's a bit Spartan at the moment.
Lower end query, but conceptually, the two are totally complementary, and it would be silly for Guac not to be able to surface this data through its API surface. So I totally intend for those to align. I just didn't want to get into the Guac train before I knew what what
it would look like.
The guts of it, are. So
okay.
Okay,
that sets my mind at ease. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
So just so I understand, the intention here, or what is being built, is a Linux Foundation hosted platform that will have this kind of web interface and also an API that will enable people to query this information, both the assertions and the assertions and the policies about certain projects, right? So that if that's the case, is the idea that other third parties, either members of OpenSSF or whatever, would be able to query this information and incorporate that into their own products? And in which case is that data explicitly licensed in a way that's compatible with that? And I'm thinking specifically of, we have a product called Sneak Advisor, where somebody types a package name and we give them information, right? We're looking to incorporate scorecard data into that. I'm thinking as you're presenting this, we should be incorporating this data into it as well. Is that kind of part of the
Yeah.
vision?
So it's funny. So I actually, I do have Sneak code running in the back end, but I don't expose that. And one of the reasons is because there is, I need less ambiguity in terms of like, am I allowed to like publish like the Sneak code output from running against a piece of open source? And unless the answer is like resounding, of course you are. Like I'm going to tread really lightly, toward that. But I think the conceptually, I would like, yes, this should be a platform. And what I'm describing is like either this as a physical platform or via Guac, and or risk dashboards. I think there's a place for it there too. But whatever it is, LF will have a place where you can go and you can say for NPM Cheerio, give me interesting information. And part of some of the results should be the execution of these policies or the policy execution results here, including the results of static analysis tools and things like that. The one place where I just don't know where the balance is do we give the raw static analysis results, knowing that there are going to be critical vulnerabilities in those results, and does that help the attacker too much? Or do we just give aggregated results like I found 3 critical vulnerabilities here? I'm not gonna tell you what they are, but like there is risk here in this box. I think it's a much longer conversation on how to do that, but very cognizant of like what giving the right amount and the right specificity of information.
Yes, Abdullah, you got your hand as well.
Yeah, Michael, do you mind going to the dependencies section, please?
Of course.
Right. So I guess we are putting versioning there, but so I brought up this before with other people, and not every single technology makes sure that the versioning is unmutable. So is that something that we can kind of like pin down in this information being kind of like displayed, even programmatically as well?
So right now, the way that I generate this, I took the easy way out for generating this. I just make a call to deps.dev, and deps.dev provides me that list of direct and indirect. So that's where I get the rows from, and then I look up if I have data on the columns. I am not sure how deps.dev knows that this version of Cheerio has DOM handler 503, because if it was a version range and 504 came out, would it have been 504? So is it a point in time? I don't think you can determine these things statically. If it has a package lock, maybe you can. So we can provide more information here. I'm also not like a lot of the policies are version agnostic. So like, is the project actively maintained will hold true for every version of that project. And is there a better way of conveying that rather than treating everything as tied to a specific version? And I don't know, some of it's UX complexity.
So Michael, thanks for presenting. Is there anything that you're looking for from the group, or is there areas where we can keep in touch and see how this is progressing?
Both. I mean, so certainly feedback, always super useful. I do intend, I mean, I think I've gotten like the major features that I wanted done. So at this point, I just need to find cycles to really connect deeply with Guac and in Toto. Those are I think the two at the top of my list to align there. But I also want to just gut feel like is this kind of information useful? Is it something that you would like make a decision on, or I don't want to build this just because I think it'd be useful. So think about it. Feedback always good, especially if it's like this part's okay, but this part like no value to see the assertions, like, or the policy language is just way too limited to make make any interesting decisions on.
I think you and I had a conversation about it. I think to me, it's useful information to get those attestations. It depends on who's creating the attestations and whether or not I trust them, or it's interesting information that we could then validate.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is the work that goes through Alpha Omega, and perhaps other entities, if we can get some of that security testing completed and then evidenced in a testable way, then I can make a call on whether or not I want to truly trust that, or at least use that as an information guideline of what's happening, and then perhaps write those attestations myself, or get a different vendor perhaps to do it. But that's my sort of personal view. I don't know if anyone else has anything to share. All right, well, look, feedback incoming, I imagine, Michael.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time. I got to drop off my kids, so I'm going to drop, but thank you all.
Thanks very much. Good stuff. Looks really cool. Right, next up is Jeff, coming back to us on the supply chain manifesto work that was brought up a couple of weeks ago, I think, a month ago.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of weeks. Yeah, I had a spring break with the kids, and then I think we're off a meeting week. So yeah, so quick update. Thanks for all the feedback from everyone. After conversation with Jonathan, Brian, a number of others, especially around trying to simplify this and not get it mixed in with some of the good work, being done with frameworks and the secure development covenant work, we've sort of trimmed it down a bit. So I have a new version. The previous version exists as well, so I can put that there. I'll put the new version in the chat here as well, but it's in the doc. I say, again, welcome all feedback, questions, comments, things you'd like to see us do regarding that. For those that aren't aware, this is sort of something in the spirit of the Agile Manifesto, and how we can encourage organizations to solve the really big gaping hole today around consumption of open source, and what they can do at a broad view. I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, you looking at any sort of time frame at this point of publishing that wider, or getting people signing up?
Sooner rather than later. I think that really comes down to Brian Fox. He has a few, I think, conversations with some within leadership, and spreading it around OpenSSF as well. We have a blog post in draft as well, but we've been incubating on this for a number of weeks. So I think we got to a pretty good point, at least with comments on the last draft. I don't think there's nothing shocking in this. It's really just the trimming and maybe reducing some of the detail to make it a little broader. So maybe by the next call, I'll have a better answer for you.
Got it. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So it's information purposes if people want to reach out and sign up to that or provide feedback. Yep. All right. Very cool. All right. Thank you. And moving on to the next element, which was the architecture and threat modeling piece of work that we've been doing for a couple of weeks now. Abdullah, do you want to bring up Paige? Is that possible?
I'm stuck with the sharing issue. I think in the same way you are.
Yeah, let me maybe do that. You pinged it to me, didn't you?
Yep.
Give me 2 seconds. Let's see if I can bring that up.
Thanks, Jan.
Got it. Give me 2 seconds. It's coming. You need to take your own laptop into work, Abdullah.
I hear you.
Or work from home. All right. Just sharing an update. So since the last call, Henrik, Abdullah, and myself got together for a good session or two, looking through the architecture. We took in the additional feedback we had from the previous sessions, and to be honest, I think we've got to the point now where, for a single architecture, the large-scale in-house development architecture, I think we've got to the point where we're pretty much finished on this one. I think there's a couple of conversations about the distribution platforms. We split that out into proprietary versus open source. Remember, that was a particular focal point. There was conversations about the maintenance of the architecture. And what we sort of suggested was really up here, we're highlighting that there's multiple different use cases of that architecture. And rather than clutter that in that same architecture with multiple different duplicative diagrams and arrows, we put them up separately as not the main flow of the data. There are definitely people that would be working on that as well. And I think we've gone through it to the point that now we're starting to look through the and start to do some fairly lightweight threat modeling. So we started to identify key assets within that architecture that we'd need to protect, particularly secrets and keys throughout pretty much multiple different elements of that SDLC, the source code and binary flowing through pretty much each individual system as well, and so forth. One of the things that we'd also discussed was whether or not to include insider threat as one of the threat actors. And our suggestion was not to initially, and perhaps look at that subsequently, just in the interests of time and actually trying to get some value out of this rather than bike shedding the thing to death, thinking about everyone is an attacker. So that's kind of our approach. We have held off doing the small scale architecture purely because we still can't find sufficient input, I'd say, from people and companies that are in that smaller scale. I think we were discussing it amongst ourselves, and the reality hit that not really, none of us are from a small scale or a small in-house development shop. We're from large institutions or even startups in inverted commas that have 100 people working for them, which, arguably that's not exactly the smallest of small. So rather than suggest, don't worry about it, we know exactly how you guys operate, we're really deciding, look, we'll just focus on the large scale one to start with, and as we get some details out of that, we'll come back and look at the other ones. Yeah. Abdullah, anything to add? Anything I missed there?
No, I think just in terms of next steps, right? You mentioned that we have started with light threat modeling, but the next stage is to actually, blow that up and be able to define properly every single threat.
Yep. So we're going through the taxonomy that was presented last time, in absence of anything else particularly, although I know there's conversations still going around the taxonomy, and then we'll start to look at, given the architecture, given the threat models around it, where do the different standards fit? Where does SALSA fit? Where does SSDF, S2, C2F fit within that? And then perhaps look at how this could lead to a Sterling toolchain or some form of toolchain that would link all of this together. That's really the next part of it. So those sort of sessions will continue. We can certainly talk through it a little bit more today if that's of interest, or move on to any other business. But I think we just need to keep plodding on and adding additional sessions to the calendar for people who are interested in digging into this. Yeah. Any comments, questions, feedback? Nope. All right. One of the things that I've been particularly bad at, but we've managed to get through it anyway, is actually putting additional meetings on the community calendar. Although we have informally got everyone together and done it anyway, I think it is something we need to take as an action, or I was wondering if anyone else could take it as an action, since I failed twice already in doing so, of putting a community action or community calendar appointment in there. I will leave that to others. All right.
I guess, John, it will be a good time to ask people that if they know someone in some company that's relatively small, to just kind of like ask them to show up a little bit so we can get that feedback, right? At the end of the day, we're still kind of like winging it.
I think that's in general, right? I think as an end user group, we have more, and as Andrew's working through the membership, we're trying to get additional members to attend as well as just consume the output. We're going through that in a sort of prioritized order, but if people do find smaller team members or smaller companies, I think that would really be beneficial. Yeah. So call to arms there. Jeffrey.
Good day. I didn't want to interrupt the flow earlier, but I would strongly suggest that our friend Jeff from Sonotype or the community here find another term in lieu of manifesto. Given the recent tragedy in the South, that type of statement is taken on sort of a pretty strong negative connotation. Just a suggestion, but.
Okay, you got that one, Jeff?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm open to any alternatives as well. So feel free to put that at the top. Add a comment. Like I say, it's meant to be a community source, so totally open, totally understand too.
Thank you very much. All right, if there's no questions about the architecture, we can jump down to the next item, updates from other groups. Any other groups want to represent, or any other status updates people would like to provide from that?
Sure. Hi, and since nobody was jumping at the topic, there's the end user working group. Yes, making sure I'm speaking to the right working group.
Yes.
Okay. Do end users include, what are the scope of end users? Maintainers, I presume.
This was, so from the mission statement that we had, it was more end users like consumers of end products, enterprises, things like that, as end users, not as much on the maintainer side, but I could be speaking out of turn.
Okay, well, I have a topic that's about maintainers as end users. I don't know if you want to hear about it then at that point, but I'll run it by you, and if you're like, yeah, nah, leave us alone, this is not in scope,
yeah, sure.
And then that's fine, and I will take my tail and go elsewhere. I'm working on under the vulnerability disclosure SIG, which is not yet a SIG because we need a couple more meetings. But it's a SIG focused on auto fixing. So basically the work that I've been engaging in the past year and change has been automating the fixing of widespread common security vulnerabilities across open source and generating bulk pull requests to fix those vulnerabilities. And it's kind of been just me and my work, and then some other researchers followed on my footsteps and did it as well. And because this work is becoming more normalized, generating pull requests at scale, and the potential negative reactions of maintainers, I mean, a lot of maintainers are like, thanks, great, merge it, and then go, that's it. But there are some maintainers that have more negative knee-jerk reactions to an automated bot or automated tooling, not really a bot, but automated tooling generating a pull request to fix their code. There's a specification that I've written up for defining what is an open source security foundation compliant automated vulnerability fix campaign. And I don't know if this is of interest to the group. There are SIG meetings every Wednesday, every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks on Wednesday at 4 p.m. discussing this topic. One of the topics in particular is this topic of pull request generation flow, and whether or not we should this specification is not just so this work of automating bulk pull request generation will be not just something that Alpha Omega does, which is where I work. I'm part of Alpha Omega, but also the idea of the specification is defining it so that this is something that any organization can implement it in such a way that they are compliant with what the OpenSSF defines as a standard for this practice. Yes, so it's a discussion of, you know, what are the best practices? What do we expect out of the people, you know, out of people doing this work? You know, topics like, is there an expectation that this is done privately? If so, how does it get done privately? GitHub doesn't have a way via an API to create a private issue or private security advisories, but they are adding that within the next they're shipping something today and then they're adding support for it in 2 weeks. However, GitHub private vulnerability disclosure is still opt-in by maintainers. So you can't, so yeah, large topic. Are people interested in learning more? You want me to go away? You know, yeah, that's spiel though.
I think it's interesting. I don't know that it's within our usual scope.
Yeah.
Just that we're usually on the consuming side of open source rather than the producing side.
Agree. Interesting though. So you've dropped the notes into the chat for people to take a look at.
This is the spec, and then the meeting notes are using the vulnerability disclosure working group meeting notes. So if you are interested in following meeting notes, go have a look at that. They're also recorded and also uploaded as probably just under the vulnerability disclosure working group.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yep.
Good update. Thank you. Anyone else go to any other working groups that people would want to give an update on? No, software integrity one or any CISA ones this week? No. I can give a quick update on the SBOM forum, which Tom Ulrich runs and a number of others. Definitely an interesting forum. They're discussing potential changes to NVD and such, and looking at how that, you know, with some changes to the data schema, perhaps it'll be possible to get a better end result. So I think some interesting things coming out from Tom and team. I'm not sure how much of that has been presented publicly, but I think there's some good blog articles that Tom's putting out there. Might be of interest to the group. All right. Other than that, anyone got any other business?
Just
Dan.
me, Jonathan, how plugged together is that with the SBOM Everywhere work stream that's happening in here in OpenSSF land?
No.
Because not. So that seems to me like we need to connect those dots.
Not clear, Dan. I'll reach out and let them know. It's more of a general conversation in that group. You know, I think they were just talking about that for that last week as opposed to anything more formal, but I'll reach out to them as well.
Yeah, that conversation is happening in the security tooling working group, and I've been plugged into that. And one of the things that we're doing there is putting together a use case document and talking about different user needs around SBOMs. And there's a lot of good discussion happening there. Just, I mean, I'm not officially, appointed or anointed to give an SBOM Everywhere update. So I wouldn't stick my hand up and pretend to be doing that. But it does sound like something that you might want to check out.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'll try and join them together if that's all right, or ping yourself.
Yeah, Josh Bressers is chairing that effort.
Excellent. All right, let me see if I can make some introductions. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other business? No. All right. Well, I think we're going to be heading into holiday season fairly soon. So if people aren't available next week or the week after, have a good vacation, and we'll see people when they come back. Other than that, we will somehow get this architecture meeting on the community calendar by hook or by crook. But it's good to see that we're making some progress there. So thanks Abdullah and Rick in absentia. We're getting some work done. So very cool. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.